Hello, my name is Philip Martin. I'm the co-owner of Philip Martin Gallery with my partner, Portia Hine, and I hope that you've had a chance to meet her at the fairs or at the gallery. And I am delighted to be speaking today with Muzae Sesay. Um, I've been really looking forward to this. It's a conversation that I've been excited about, and I'm just really thrilled to have the chance to talk to Muzae about the new works that he's made and the pieces that will be featuring at Art Basel Miami Beach in December. If you have any questions about anything you see, feel free to give me an email. And say, how you doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're coming to us from your studio there in Oakland.
Correct.
This was the first painting that you and I had a chance to work together on that appeared in our night painting show. It's called Goodnight West Oakland, Love 980. Do you want to talk to us just a little bit about this painting and some of the things you were maybe thinking about or things that were going on in it?
Yeah. So where to begin? I guess I think it's important to know kind of the way I think about painting in a certain way. I mean, in one aspect, it's completely endless and just thoughts and ideas all can have an avenue to be explored through painting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think about a lot of social happenings in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'm a big fan and very interested in infrastructure and city planning and the way we design civic space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, there is this freeway stretch in Oakland called the 980. It's about a 2-mile highway that connects two larger freeways,
Mm-hmm.
kind of running down, splitting Oakland into two, kind of from downtown and West Oakland. But this infrastructure project has a really dark history of being this tool for redlining, like a physical infrastructure for redlining, cutting West Oakland, a predominantly Black suburb of Oakland,
Mm-hmm.
cutting it off of cutting it away from the downtown commercial
Yeah.
side. So basically, in the 60s, in Oakland, there was a pretty strong Black community that was growing and prospering and
Mm-hmm.
opening up shops and kind of had this direct connection to the downtown commerce side of Oakland, which was still predominantly white.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the freeway was built pretty much to divide Oakland, West Oakland from the downtown
Mm-hmm.
to stop protests that were coming into
Mm-hmm.
downtown from um, West Oakland, organized by the Black Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have this very other side of the tracks type dynamic with
Uh-huh.
this bridge
Uh-huh.
where on one side it's a more prosperous downtown, and then the other side is a community that is cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And now the bridge really, or the freeway stretch is super pointless. Not that many cars drive on it. There's never traffic.
Didn't you say it's one of the least used freeways in the United States?
Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
the least used. It's if you go on it, there's a few cars on it.
Mhm.
It's only a couple miles long. It has only a couple exits,
Right.
but it's also 7 lanes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
yeah, so pretty much now it's a lot of encampments underneath it,
Right.
a lot of homeless encampments. And yeah, it's just something that I think is a scar of
Mhm.
Oakland. I think it's a terrible infrastructure project,
Right.
and there's a lot of talk about destroying it and making
Yeah.
it into like an open boulevard,
Yeah.
um, with like shops, and opens up housing that, you know, all the properties owned by the cities, so it
Mhm.
opens up the possibility for city housing and low
Mhm.
income housing.
Mhm.
um so yeah, like I wanted to like make um this like dark homage to this bridge, in kind of
Mhm.
hopes that in the future it will be destroyed.
Mhm.
So kind of like a preemptive folklore of something that is current, but I think will be soon, hopefully in the past,
Mhm.
where like I think this painting hopefully will outlive the structure itself,
Mhm.
and maybe tell a tale of, you know, the 980. It's
Yeah.
also outside of my house,
Right.
so I see it a lot now, and it's
Yeah.
a lot more in focus for me.
Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of like details in this painting. There's a lot of different ways to enter it. Um, it's also a super beautiful painting. How do all of those things kind of come together for you and in how a
Yeah.
viewer might read or encounter this work?
Yeah, I think making things that aren't beautiful like beautiful, or like
Mhm.
putting this aesthetic to it,
Mhm.
I think it plays into this idea of I'm kind of the observer, you know.
Mhm.
I do have a stance,
Mhm.
but I don't want the painting necessarily to have a stance. It's more of just
Right.
laying claim to like what's happening.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, kind of a beauty in all things around. So like
Yeah.
even though the intent in the um you know, the idea behind it is not that beautiful, and the structure itself isn't that beautiful, you know, I put it into the painting as, and it has beauty to it, but it kind of is in this imposing structure
No.
that is actually probably taking away something even more beautiful that could have been in that space,
Yeah.
you know. So like the structures, the like structures in between the orange, so in
Mhm.
between the like openings of the overpass,
Yeah.
kind of imply this like type of um neighborhood that isn't there, you know. I
Mhm.
think the pencil line, the line, or the line is like um kind of implying like the absence of something,
Mhm.
but also the idea of it being there, you know. It's kind of like the dotted line, like symbolizing what could have been there instead.
Yeah. Well, I'm very attracted to this kind of, sometimes in your drawing work, you have to me almost a kind of Paul Klee like hand. And you
Yeah.
are extremely knowledgeable about painting. You just did an essay for the Joan Brown catalog at SF MoMA.
Mm.
You have a background in sociology and also in architecture, and you've been making work, as you told me, essentially nonstop since you were a kid. One
Right.
thing that really struck me with all of these aspects at play, and one thing that struck me in your work is kind of what the reading order is. I think the Goodnight West Oakland painting does a little bit of that. Like, you might have immediately seen a bridge or you might have seen the houses, and can be flips. And you made this interesting comment that in a sense in your work that every viewer is a guest. You want to talk a little bit about any of those ideas if they resonate with you?
Yeah, of course. Actually, doing stuff like this is kind of counter of that idea, because I do want space for the viewer to like navigate in their own way.
Hmm.
I think my most recent works, like the work that I've been making this past year, has
Hmm.
been more, I've been making this more conscious move to less vague spaces, a little
Hmm.
bit more true to the scene that I'm seeing, you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So like this painting specifically, there's room for interpretation, but not as much room as
Mhm.
something like maybe like this type of work behind me, where
Right.
it's just like way more fragmented, and the skewed perspective is like all over the place. Where
Hmm.
this one, it's just very flat, like looking at the two-dimensional planes of color like coming together to make that third dimension.
Hmm.
But like the work that we're taking to Miami is very like, I would say more of my literal stuff
Okay.
compared to other things. So, still a lot of room for the viewer to navigate and kind of like
Hmm.
choose their own adventure.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I think I'm giving a little bit more. So
Uh-huh.
like, when I'm talking about that last one, I'm talking about a specific, very specific place
Hmm.
and specific infrastructure.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, that just comes from seeing the world and, you know, wanting to respond to it and like having some type of reaction to it.
Yeah.
And like for this one, also kind of a specific scene and time and place.
Hmm.
This is actually like forest lawn in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
cemetery, um, on Mother's Day.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really interesting how like bustling it was, like in
Yeah.
commerce. Like
Hmm.
there's all of these flower vendors just like lined up on the boulevard, um, because it's probably a very profitable day for them,
Right.
but
Forest
like,
Lawn is a cemetery.
yeah, but also like, it's just like high commerce
Hmm.
and capitalism, like serving people who've like lost their mothers, coming to mourn their mothers on in
Hmm.
like this giant cemetery.
Hmm.
So I don't know, I thought there was something like poetic about that, like,
Yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
think there's a poetry that, is, very much in your work that is very attractive to me. I mean, I'm obviously a white male. Um, and the work, I think it's interesting because as an artist, you have this whole question of sort of where do you locate generosity in relationship to the viewer? How do
Right.
you have a conversation across the picture plane? How do you do that? Your work always strikes me as absolutely specific in this way through the color, through your hand. But then, as I say, also very open in terms of presenting you with very clear sensory feelings and the feeling of something that you've maybe seen, or if you haven't seen, you in a sense have the authority of having seen it by virtue of the artist as a kind of stand-in for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then also very open as to sort of what life can be or what can happen. I mean, the mourning vendors there for the cemetery are also feeding their families at the same time that they're
Exactly.
so there's so many different aspects to
Yeah,
that.
exactly. It's just I don't know, these moments in life that are just interesting juxtapositions of
Hmm.
like sorrow and grief and commercialism, and like
Yeah.
people trying to survive and you know provide for their families. And I love, I don't know, I feel like art is endless just because ideas are endless and
Hmm.
ways of seeing are endless. And sometimes paintings reflect like very large social ideas, like very
Hmm.
macro happenings and things like that. But also the smallest of micro happenings also have the same weight.
Hmm.
And I think that's super fascinating how like, like a world war could honestly have the same effect in someone's life as like a breakup or
Mhm.
something so small and seemingly
Yeah.
insignificant.
Yeah.
So yeah, on that same note, like this painting was about an embarrassing moment that I had at a wine bar in Los Angeles, El Prado, like in Echo Park. And like one of my friends is the bartender there, and she got us this like really nice bottle, and we were all like really excited about it. And I immediately dropped the bottle, and it just like slipped right out of my hands. And because it was like, you know, it was wet and I didn't know it was wet, and I was really embarrassed.
Right.
And I was like, oh my god, I just destroyed this expensive bottle of wine. And I don't know, I think the embarrassment kind of struck, like I was like, oh, I should like counter this energy with like a
Yeah.
positive energy and like make
Yeah.
a painting about it. Well, I made a drawing about it at first, and then I was like, oh, I want to make a painting about this and kind of right the wrong of my
Yeah.
embarrassment in a way, you know.
Well,
um
you again, I feel like there's a both and approach in your work that I really find really beautiful, and also just again really really grounding, in that the work can be so many things, and why should it only be one thing, you know?
yeah,
That's just not how 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 life is. We're always talking about politics. I mean, that's the famous slogan, the personal is political, because we live it in our
yeah,
lives, and we do our best to try to understand what it's like for other people and come together to hear that.
yeah. And you
And
know,
then
I
it's
think,
also funny that you have a kind of Larry David moment with the wine.
oh yeah,
The wine.
yeah, super Larry David moment. And then I was just trying to like make lemons out of lemonade and use that energy to
Yeah.
make a painting,
Yeah.
um as if it like kind of makes it less embarrassing
Sure.
somehow or
Sure.
something. I don't really know, but
Now I have a question. When you talked about two planes coming together in the
mhm.
previous painting, can you were hinting a little bit about how you construct your paintings, and here we have it's
Yeah.
almost, I'm seeing maybe Lewitt, like talk a little
Mhm.
bit about how these paintings come together. I mean, you have a very
Yeah,
strong drawing practice, and in fact, you have a whole method using oil pastels to kind of create lines, these edges. I cannot stress enough to people how
yeah,
insanely beautiful they are. Very, very. It's you know, in the way with Cezanne, you have this moment when you look at a Cezanne, and you know, you never have the edge because you have all the information that forms where the edge is. Do you know what I'm saying? So
mhm.
it's like it's all that edge is always kind of moving,
Yeah,
through his brushstrokes. And when I look at your work, you have this kind of haze where things come together, and also this kind of really resonant color, like just warmth and energy. I don't know if
mhm.
any of those
Yeah, definitely.
any of those things.
I think that technique specifically I gravitate towards because it's dreamy, you know.
Yeah.
It's I often think about the construction of paintings as like, um you know, not, it's like memory, you know,
Yeah.
where memory, you might not remember the details, and like
Mm-hmm.
that crisp edge of a memory isn't really
Mm-hmm.
there.
No.
It's always kind of malleable and
Yeah.
fuzzy and warm, you know.
Yeah.
I think the what I think about memory is not necessarily the specifics, but the like emotional takeaway
Yes.
from the events. And
Yeah.
so like the oil pastel technique really helps me create that like emotional takeaway and like
Mm-hmm.
allude to this idea that it's really not about the facts
Mm-hmm.
of the memory. And
Yeah.
also the skewed perspective, the skewed perspective
Yeah.
is kind of like that moment of trying to remember something in multiple ways of
Yeah.
like, oh, it could have been like this or like this or like this, and you
Yeah.
can't get like this. um but in to answer your question about the two-dimensional planes and like how I construct in that way, it's like I think of it as honesty,
Mm-hmm.
because the painting service is a two-dimensional canvas. Like I
Right.
really stress the truth of the matter of like this is a two-dimensional rectangle. So all the dimension that you're seeing is just perceived by you, the viewer.
Mhm.
So, I really, really push forward the flatness,
Yep.
but with the flatness and the juxtaposition of flat two-dimensional shapes, we can create, you know,
Yeah.
third dimension in different ways and allow the viewer to enter
Mhm.
when they want to enter.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm coming back to that, but I just feel like in your work, you do create a place for people. Like there's a place for that person to inhabit. I feel so in your work, just very conscious of again, I'm going to use the word generosity and opening that you create for people. And we talked about, facts are facts. Things are, reality is reality. We're not we bring what we bring to it. And we've talked a little bit about that. Your point about memory and emotion is actually really amazing. I think one of the things about turning 50, which I just did, is I've been thinking a lot about memory, because as you get older, one of the things you're obviously aware of is that you're losing your memory. But then what's actually been really interesting is through the process of thinking about it, I started to question what I even remembered anyway.
Yeah.
And you realize
it's tough.
how much we have, like, whereas as humans, we're always telling ourselves these narratives after the fact and creating these things, but then what actually happened, it's, like the reliability of the eyewitness. And there's something here in your work that talks about that I think is interesting, as you point out, like there's something there. I don't know if any of that resonates, but I don't know if there's kind of
I mean, definitely. I think so much of my life actually revolves around a tumultuous relationship with memory.
yeah.
And like I paint to remember or to
Yeah.
think about remembering. I take a lot of photos because I don't want to lose
Yeah.
some things,
Yeah, totally.
and I've had like a very skewed memory my whole life, and like I talk about that in paintings and in work, and it kind of comes out. And
Yeah.
I'm a collector for that reason. I'm a big
Yes, you're a total collector. Yeah, totally.
I'm a big collector because I want
yeah.
things to be remembered. I want
Yeah.
things to be like not forgotten. That's and in terms of painting, and like act like I see myself as not painting the figure, but like
Uh-huh.
activating the figure. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
totally.
Like,
Yes, this is like what I'll get there and try to articulate it better, but this is what I'm saying, is like this deep
yeah,
feeling in your work that I just connect to. And sometimes when we talk, I feel like a complete idiot because it's so vague, but it's not that way. I'm trying to, like, I have a being response to you.
yeah. And I think that's better than any type of
That's killer,
specific,
man. It's awesome.
because like, I'm really interested in people. Like,
Yeah.
as you said, like I studied sociology. That's my like, I'm very interested in humans and their interactions. And
Yeah.
so I don't paint the figure for that reason, because like I really do love the figure,
Sure.
but I feel like when I don't put the figure and I make space,
Yeah.
like literally the viewer becomes the figure and can like
Mhm.
do whatever they want in there.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because we talked about these urban environments outside your studio that you're responding to, and there's people in there doing different things. Like there's a painting called Sly Vendors, which I like, or there's a lot of conversation around vendors, street vending.
Yeah.
Other, because with homeless people, we see people living their lives on the street. It's it's really a powerful part of modern urbanity that at least in California, that's a huge crisis. That not only is it something for us to solve, but it's also something for all of us as humans to see and not see, because that's what people want to do, is not see. And in your work, I always feel like it's not judging people or giving people perspective per se. It's informing you that these things are a part of this world that you are a part of, and you have a connection to these things. And I think you also have a vision for beauty, because that's your internal being. It's who you are. It's what you show people, but yet it's all a part of this big picture. I don't know if that's helpful,
it becomes actually difficult in the studio, because sometimes I feel guilty for making dark things beautiful, you know what I mean? And like sometimes I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to be over glorifying things, but when I work on the canvas, like there's a sense of harmony that has to happen for me that like is, you know, I think the beauty of an object is like important, and it like, you know, it's just it's like an and both, you know. I live by an and both model, like in pretty much all of my aspects of living, in this like in a post-modernity type of way, where I'm thinking about the things that would be thought of hypocritical as being one. So like, you know, the sadness and happiness in the same painting, darkness and light happening at the same time, and like seriousness and playful, you know.
There's a purpose in picturing joy. I mean, there's a reason to do it. I mean, that doesn't mean there's not a problem, but it also we don't have, you know, we can solve our problems with many different faces and feelings, and it's important, you know. Now this, of course, is, and I'll tell you, I sort of keep these short, and so we're pretty much ready to wrap it up, but you know, first off, is there anything that you want to say that we haven't talked about yet? And second of all, this painting is kind of a Joshua Tree in the desert, having a totally different experience. And obviously you've made all kinds of work. So we looked at a certain body that you were saying, but what about this painting that people have been looking at?
You know, like a lot of these paintings too that I gave you are like just ones that I purely just wanted to make. You know,
I love this painting so much. So good.
Which is some of my favorite paintings. You know, like typically in an exhibition, I'll have like a overall theme, and everything will be like within that theme. And this one does have a theme of Southern California and Los Angeles and moments.
And you, of course, you're from Long Beach.
I'm from Long Beach.
So
yeah,
you live in Oakland.
Grew up in Anaheim, so I'm from SoCal. Yeah, I think this is just this moment where like I started appreciating the desert. You know, growing up in SoCal, I think I did not care for the desert. You know, I moved to the Bay Area and was really interested in like, you know, trees and like lush forests.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, coming back down and spending my first times in like Joshua Tree area, I was just like, wow, this is actually just stunningly beautiful landscape. And yeah, this was like in the backyard of where I was in Joshua Tree, and I really loved it.
Well, this is it. This is the last of the paintings that we're showing. This one's called Fashion District. So we'll have all these paintings in Miami. Our booth is B23. So if you're down there, come and say hello. Muzae himself is going to be making an appearance. I'm super excited about that. Anything that we didn't cover, or is that pretty much it?
I mean, yeah, I literally could talk forever about anything. So yeah, let's wrap it up. This is the Fashion District from overhead. Yeah, so like this was taken from just looking outside the window, and on a like in a tall building and looking down the street. I don't remember what street it was, but near the fashion district and the arts district area, and it was just lined with street vendors. Another like type
Mhm.
of vendor, like interested in street vendor culture.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, everyone just had these colorful umbrellas that were just lining the street, and I thought that was a really interesting like composition
Yeah.
with this like the like warehouse buildings and like these like 2 rows of just colorful umbrellas housing these uh street vendors selling foods and whatever.
Yeah. And going back to the 980, I mean, you have done a lot of, you're not just painting the painting, you're actually quite informed, obviously, on it. And there are a lot of possible solutions that they're actively talking about to figure out what they should do with that space and what could be possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we could
yeah.
have some street vending, for example, or housing or
Well,
all
that's
kinds
the
of things.
idea. Yeah. Yeah, I'm like I follow it a lot. So like the 980 situation is like an ongoing project. It's like heightened because they're building a new baseball park
Right,
for
for the
the
A's.
Oakland A's.
Right.
It happens to be right at the end of that freeway. So
Sure.
they're talking about demolishing it, making it this like grand boulevard
Mhm.
um, with housing and street life.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll, like right now it's just literally like a shelter for people. Like it's a
Yeah.
roof. It's literally
Yeah.
like a roof over
Yeah.
people's heads. And it's just a terrible use of land and infrastructure. So,
Yeah.
but not to say this is Los Angeles. So this is
We have our own issues. Thank God we elected
oh,
Karen Bass, and she's, that's her first
yeah.
job was with Community Coalition. Community Coalition.
Yeah, this is a slight political moment of the
Yeah,
webinar where we thank
yeah.
Karen Bass for.
It's always a political moment.
I
Uh,
know. Happy to hear
well,
that.
it's great to talk to you. I'm so glad that you did this. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for showing the work with me, and I'm really, really thrilled. And
Thank you
so
for the opportunity.
visit us in Miami, and there's a lot going on with Muzae. If you have any questions, let me know. And Muzae, thanks for doing it with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a
Talk
good
soon.
one. Bye.
Later.